grocery stores, bright lights, friendly clerks, routine errands. We let our guard down in these ordinary places, but what if that normalcy is just a mask? What if something ancient and unsettling is watching from the shelves? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 3 true Reddit-based horror stories that happened in everyday grocery stores. After this, you may never shop alone again. So, turn down the lights, and let's explore the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in a grocery bag. Our first story takes us to rural Montana in the heart of a bitter winter, 2016. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes the world feel smaller, quieter, and a little more haunted. Kyle, a young man in his early 20s, worked the overnight shift at the only grocery store for miles around. The town was so small, everyone knew each other's names, but at night, it felt like he was the last person left on Earth. The job was lonely, just him, the endless hum of refrigerators and the cold that crept in from every corner. Sometimes the silence was so deep, he could hear his own heartbeat echoing in the aisles. His main task each night was restocking 6 massive walk-in freezers, each one colder and darker than the last. The freezers were old, their doors heavy, their interiors lined with frost and shadows. One night, as he approached freezer 5, he heard a soft, rhythmic tapping from inside. Tap, tap, tap. It was so faint, he almost thought he imagined it, but it continued, steady and deliberate. Telling himself it was just the old machinery settling or maybe ice shifting, he hesitated only a moment before opening the door. The tapping stopped instantly. The freezer was empty, silent, and bitterly cold. The only sound was his own breath, fogging in the frigid air. He stocked the shelves, but the unease lingered, crawling up his spine. Every shadow seemed to stretch a little too long, every sound a little too sharp. As he left, the tapping started again, this time louder, more frantic, almost desperate. It was as if something inside was begging to get out. Heart pounding, Kyle opened the door once more, half expecting to see someone or something waiting for him. Silence. But on the frosty interior he saw a handprint, small, childlike, with fingers too long and bent at unnatural angles. The print was fresh, as if someone had just pressed their hand there and vanished. For days he avoided freezer 5, making excuses to restock the others first. He felt watched, as if the freezer itself was waiting for him to return. But the store seemed to resist his avoidance. Lights burned out for no reason, boxes toppled over in empty aisles, and sometimes, in the dead of night, the tapping returned, echoing through the cold. He finally told his manager Dave about the tapping and the handprint. Dave brushed it off with a shrug, but Kyle noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, fear or maybe resignation, as if he'd heard it all before. A week later, while restocking freezer 6, the single bulb overhead flickered and died. Before he could react, the heavy door slammed shut behind him, trapping him in the pitch-black cold. Panic set in as he pounded on the door, his breath coming in ragged gasps, the cold biting deeper with every second. Then from the other side came a slow, deliberate scraping, and that same wet tapping, right at his head level. It was closer than ever before. He felt the vibrations through the metal, heard guttural breathing and was sure he wouldn't make it out. The air felt thick, heavy with something unseen. Suddenly the latch lifted. The door swung open on its own. The storage room outside was empty, silent, as if nothing had happened at all. Kyle didn't wait to question it. He ran, leaving everything behind. His jacket, his cart, even his sense of reason. He quit the next day. Dave just nodded, barely surprised. "Yeah, I figured. Freezer 5 gets another one," he said, almost like it was a curse the store had learned to live with. Kyle never learned what haunted that freezer or why it seemed to choose certain people. He never went back and he never looked for answers. But he knows now some places, no matter how ordinary, hold secrets best left undisturbed, and sometimes the coldest places hide the darkest things. Our second story comes from Rachel, a university student who, in 2020, took an overnight job at one of Toronto's largest supermarkets. The city outside was quiet, the parking lot nearly deserted, and the fluorescent lights inside cast long shadows across the empty aisles. For Rachel, it was just a way to pay the bills. Until something happened that she would never forget. The job itself was straightforward. Most nights, the store was silent, except for the soft hum of refrigerators and the occasional clatter of boxes as the overnight crew restocked shelves. Sometimes a stray shopping cart would be left in the wrong place, but that was nothing unusual. At least, that's what Rachel thought at first. But there was one cart that stood out from the rest. Cart number 13. It was older than the others, its metal frame pitted with rust, the number stenciled in faded black paint. No matter how many times it was returned to the cart bay, it always seemed to end up somewhere else, sometimes blocking an aisle, sometimes waiting in the shadows near the loading dock. At first, Rachel assumed it was a prank by one of her co-workers, but one night, while she was alone in the pet food aisle, she glanced up and saw cart 13 at the far end, its wheels angled toward her. The store was silent, and she was sure no one else was nearby. The air felt colder, and a strange unease crept over her. Nervous, Rachel radioed her supervisor Marco to ask if he'd left any carts in the aisle. Marco's voice crackled back, confused. He hadn't been near that section all night, and neither had anyone else on the crew. Later that shift, during a routine cart run, Rachel found herself face to face with cart 13 again. She hesitated, then reached out to push it back to the bay. The moment her hand touched the cold, rough handle, a chill shot up her arm. Suddenly, the store's lights flickered and went out, plunging everything into pitch-black silence. Heart pounding, Rachel fumbled for her phone and turned on the flashlight. The narrow beam barely pierced the darkness, illuminating only a few feet ahead. She tried calling for help over the radio, but all she heard was static. No voices, no reassurance, just the hiss of empty air. When she turned back, cart 13 was gone. Panic rising, she scanned the aisle, then at the far end she saw it, its silhouette barely visible in the dim light. Without warning, the cart began to roll toward her, picking up speed, its wheels squeaking and rattling on the tile. No one was pushing it. Rachel froze, unable to move as the cart barreled closer and closer. Just as the cart was about to reach her, the store's lights snapped back on with a harsh buzz. Rachel blinked in the sudden brightness. The cart had vanished. There was nothing in front of her, but empty floor. She stood there shaking, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Marco found her a few minutes later, pale and trembling in the break room. He listened quietly as she told him what she'd seen. Then, in a low voice, he revealed something Rachel had never heard before. The supermarket was built on the site of an older grocery store that had burned down in 1983. A late-night stalker had died in the fire, at exactly 2:46 a.m. Marco pulled out an old, yellowed newspaper clipping from his wallet. In the black and white photo of the fire's aftermath, a single cart stood untouched in the ruins. Its number, barely visible but unmistakable. 13, the same cart Rachel had seen, decades later, still haunting the aisles. Rachel never returned to work after that night. Sometimes even now, she wakes up in the middle of the night, always at 2:46 a.m., her heart racing, convinced she can hear the faint, unmistakable sound of a rusty wheel turning somewhere in the darkness, echoing from a place she hopes she'll never see again. Our final story unfolds in the quiet heart of a small Michigan town, inside a grocery store that, from the outside, looked like any other. It was 2019, and the store was a familiar landmark, its neon sign flickering in the dusk, welcoming locals for decades. Among the staff were Leo, 17, and his best friend Sam. They spent their summer break stacking shelves, joking in the break room, and learning the rhythms of small-town life. But there was one rule that set this store apart. Never, under any circumstances, stock aisle 7A after sunset. The warning was clear, repeated by every manager and posted in the employee handbook. No one ever explained why. The only answer was a curt store policy, as if that alone should be enough to keep curiosity at bay. By day, aisle 7A looked perfectly ordinary, just shelves of cleaning supplies and air fresheners. But the air always felt a little colder there, the lights a bit dimmer, and the silence deeper than anywhere else in the store. Even the most seasoned employees hurried through it. For most of that summer, Leo and Sam followed the rules without question, sticking to their routines and swapping stories about the odd quirks of the store. But as the weeks passed, their curiosity grew. What could possibly be so dangerous about a grocery aisle after dark? One night, with the store nearly empty and their shift almost over, Leo nudged Sam. They decided to break the rule, just for a moment, to restock the air fresheners in 7A. They laughed nervously, convincing themselves it was just a silly superstition. As they stepped into the aisle, the familiar hum of the store's refrigerators and distant chatter faded away, replaced by a heavy, unnatural silence. The temperature dropped instantly, their breath hung in the air, and the shelves felt icy to the touch. Shadows seemed to stretch and twist along the shelves, as if the darkness itself was alive and watching. As they worked quickly, a wet, shuffling sound echoed from the far end of the aisle, bouncing off the linoleum and making their skin crawl. Suddenly, a sickly, sweet smell, far too strong to be any air freshener, filled the air. The boys froze, hearts pounding, certain they were being watched by something unseen. Without warning, a can of air freshener shot off the shelf, clattering to the floor right at their feet. The noise shattered the silence, and panic set in. Terrified, Leo and Sam bolted from the aisle, sprinting down the empty hallway and bursting into the break room, gasping for breath. Waiting for them was Mrs. Gable, the store manager, her face grave. She'd been watching the security cameras and knew exactly what they'd done. In her office, Mrs. Gable finally revealed the truth. During a renovation in the 1970s, workers had discovered a hidden room behind the wall of aisle 7A. The walls were covered in bizarre symbols, and evidence suggested it had been used for strange rituals. No one knew by whom, or for what purpose. The owner, frightened by what they'd found, ordered the room sealed up immediately. Aisle 7A was built right over the old wall, hiding its secrets. Ever since, strange things happened only at night. Whispers in the dark, shadows that moved on their own, and objects flying from shelves with no explanation. Employees who ignored the rule never lasted long. The rule, Mrs. Gable explained, was never about discipline. It was about keeping everyone safe from whatever lingered behind that wall. She fired Leo and Sam, not out of anger but to protect them from further danger. She told them to never come back after dark, for their own good. "That space, it doesn't like to be disturbed after dark," she warned. Leo never set foot in the store again. For weeks afterward, Leo was haunted by nightmares of the shuffling sound, the overpowering sweet smell, and the wall in aisle 7A bulging outward, as if something inside was desperate to break free. Even years later, he never forgot the lesson. Some rules exist for reasons we're better off not knowing. The grocery store's lights flicker back to normal, but the chill lingers. The stories of Kyle, Rachel, and Leo remind us even the most ordinary places can hide the strange and the terrifying. Next time you're alone in a quiet aisle and feel a sudden cold, maybe don't ignore it. Some rules exist for a reason. Some aisles are best left unwalked. If you have your own strange story, share it on my subreddit below. Until next time, be safe, and maybe consider getting your groceries delivered.